The sooner you can figure this one little thing out, the sooner you're going to be able to teach your dog pretty much anything. I'm talking about probably one of the most commonly used dog training techniques, and that is something called luring. So what is luring exactly? If you look up luring in the dictionary, you're going to see that it says to tempt a person or an animal to do something or go somewhere. So when it comes to dog training, we use luring all the time when it comes to teaching new behaviors. And actually the most common way to lure a dog is something that you might have done with your puppy or your new dog when you're teaching them to sit. It's the classic one where you get your treat in your hand and you raise your hand up to your chest like this. The dog's eye line follows that treat up and naturally gets their bum to sit down. This is probably the most common form of luring that pretty much everybody would have probably done at some point. But we can use luring for so much more than just to sit. In fact, we can use luring to teach some pretty complex behaviors. When you see all those fancy dog trainers on social media showing off all of their skills with their dogs, and their dogs are going left, right, middle, up, down, twist, spin around, jump on their head and do a backflip, there would have been some sort of luring involved in the teaching of all of those things. But for most of you pet dog owners, luring is going to be probably just used to get your dog to sit, to lay down, to go onto a place, to go into a crate, and also to heel. Luring is actually something that's going to be really easy for you to start doing, but it's actually quite hard to master. So I'm going to talk you through a couple of pointers today that are going to help you improve your luring skills. Aren't we magic? You're going to want to learn to hold the food in the palm of your hand. The reason for this is that when it comes to luring and luring at a higher level, it's going to be the way that you turn your hand that's going to really help the dog to follow that food around. So when you're trying to teach your dog certain things that require them to move, it's really important that you're going to keep your palm facing the dog at all times. So that's where you're going to get really comfortable with rotating your wrist round so that your palm is always facing the dog's nose, which is going to make it nice and easy for them to follow. Remember to take your time with this, because if you do go too fast, your dog's going to get confused or they're just going to lose interest. Some dogs are going to get luring really quickly, and for some of you it's going to be a really easy process to get started, but there are going to be some dogs out there that just don't really understand it and they're not really keen on doing it. It's still going to be possible to teach these dogs to be lured around by food, but what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take your time. When it comes to these dogs that are being a little bit more difficult, it's really important that what you're doing is you're taking it step by step, and I mean that literally. What you're going to do is you're going to move the food ever so slightly, and they're probably going to lean into it. Every single movement towards that lure you're going to reward, and then you're going to build up over time. So you'll start off with like a little lean, and then maybe that will turn into one step, and then you want to build that up to more and more steps as you go along, until eventually the dog's going to be following that food around like a pro. It doesn't really matter what you're trying to teach the dog, you really want to make sure that you're starting it off really simple. A mistake that you want to try and avoid is having an idea of what you want the dog to do and just trying to use the lure to go straight from point A to point B. For so many dogs, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to take your time using the lure and incrementally rewarding them as you get closer and closer to point B. So luring is primarily going to be used to get your dog into certain positions. So the process for teaching a dog absolutely anything is going to be to first use luring to get the dog to start doing the thing that you want them to do and get comfortable with those movements. And then once you can consistently lure the dog into those positions, that's when you want to start adding a name on top. Don't worry about naming anything until you can consistently lure the dog into those positions first. Once you know exactly how to lure your dog into the positions that you want them to go into, that's when you start adding a name on top of it. Then once you've added a name on top, you can start fading the lure away. So basically when you're fading the lure away, you're just slowly over time moving the food away from the dog, and your hand gestures are going to be a little bit closer to your body. Then eventually your end goal is to completely fade out the lure and just use the verbal command that you would have attached to that behavior that you would have been working on. So when you're teaching your dog anything new, you really want to do it in a place that's nice and calm and neutral. So the best places to go is going to be either your house, your back garden, or just a quiet park like what I'm in today. When you're using your lure, you don't really want to be using a lead, but it is okay to have a lead attached to your dog if they're prone to running away or losing interest really quickly. But you do want to try and keep your sessions short so your dog isn't losing interest. If you're out in a public space though, you definitely want to have your dog on a lead, but for the most part, if you're at home in your garden, you can do loads of this probably without using one at all. And usually if you have used luring to teach your dog a behavior, you generally don't need to use the lead very much anyway. Once you master the technique of luring, you'll start to find that teaching your dog pretty much anything becomes super easy. So get out there and practice your luring. I hope this has helped you guys out. We'll see you in a bit.